Hello and Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to a new video of mine with a new lecture on a new topic. And today's new topic is modern novel. We are going to discuss the different aspects, the different features, and the different modern novelists who produced brilliant novels in modern times in 20th century. But before discussing them, let's have an introduction to this topic. It is said that modern age is an age of inquiry and experimentation. Everything was going through the process of inquiry and experimentation. Modern man actually developed a habit of questioning and inquiring each and everything around him. He questioned old moral values, religious values, political values, social norms, social customs and conventions. If he finds any faults with them, then he goes through the process of experimentation. In other words, when he finds faults with the old things, then he replaces them with the new things, and in this way goes through the process of experimentation. And this experimentation leads to big changes in the 20th century, in 20th century modern society. Everything was going through the process of change due to inquiry and experimentation. Religion was going through the process of change. Politics was going through the process of change. Morality, customs and conventions, values, all of them, they were going through the process of change. And this same change was visible in 20th century English literature or modern literature. Same was happening in poetry, in novel, in drama, in the prose of the times or the literary criticism of the times. Especially the modern novel was going through the process of transformation, experimentation. Everything was being done to modern novel. While talking about this experimentation in modern novel, one of the critics, J.B. Priestley, he is of the view that if somebody asks me what is going on in modern novel, then my answer would be everything. That everything was going through the process of change in modern novel, or every sort of experiment was being conducted in the genre of novel. Different novelists were appearing in 20th century modern times, and they were experimenting with this genre. As a result of that, we have altogether different type of novel in this age, completely different from Victorian novel or traditional novel. There are at least three major differences pointed out by David Dashes in this regard between modern novel and traditional novel. He said that first important difference between modern novel and traditional novel is that modern novel does not focus upon socio-economic problems of its characters. In other words, modern novel does not focus upon social and economic ups and downs that happen in the lives of human beings. Modern novel does not focus upon that. Whereas on the other hand, traditional novel, which is also Victorian novel goes through the process of depiction of economic and social up and down of its characters. It largely focuses upon middle classes of the society, lower middle classes of the society, and the lowest classes of the society, and depicts the economic up and down of its characters. For example, the famous novelist of Victorian era was Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens particularly focuses upon the economic up and down of his characters. He focuses upon the economic, social ups and downs in the lives of his characters. He does not focus upon any other aspect. Rather, he largely focuses upon this aspect of the life, this aspect of the Victorian culture. One of the favorite most theme of Charles Dickens' novel was poor boy making good in life. Means poor boy making financial progress in life. This is the theme of Great Expectations. This is the theme of many other novels of Charles Dickens. Next important difference pointed out by David Dashes between traditional and modern novel is conception of time. Modern novel has a different concept of time. and traditional novel has a different concept of time. In other words, modern novel treats time in a different manner, whereas traditional novel treats time in a different manner. According to traditional novel, time is something that can be divided into bits and pieces like seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, decades, centuries, and millennium or millennia. Another important aspect of treatment of time by the traditional novel is that traditional novel believes that if time passes, then it cannot be brought back. It is gone forever. Whereas this sort of treatment is never given by the modern novel to the time. Modern novel treats time in a different manner. For example, time is never divided by modern novel in bits and pieces like seconds and minutes and hours and days and years and centuries and all that. Rather, time is treated as something which has a continuous flow, which can have three major portions: past, present, and future. And all three sections of time are connected with each other, are linked with each other. All of them can be brought together. We can retrieve the past, we can go into future, we can talk about the present. So in traditional novel, time is something that is sporadic, that is something that happens in breaks, whereas in modern novel, time happens in a different manner. It is something that is continuous. Third important difference between traditional novel and modern novel is impact of psychology. Traditional novel has little impact of psychology on it, whereas on the other hand, modern novel has great impact of psychology on it. So much so that a separate novel came into being in modern times which deals with psychology, which only depicts the psychology of its characters. And this novel is called stream of consciousness novel or psychological novel. In this novel, the novelists solely focus upon the psychologies of its characters, the inside of its character, the consciousness of its character. And rarely it focuses upon the outside of its characters. Whereas in traditional novel, writer rarely focuses upon the psychology of its character. Most of the time, traditional novelist talks about the outside of his characters. He does not talk about the inside of his characters. Modern novelists can be categorized into three broad categories. Number one can be called the traditionalists. Number two category can be called the new forces. And number three category can be called the psychological novelists. First of all, we are going to discuss the traditionalists. This category of the novelists includes H.G. Wells, Arnold Bennett, and Galsworthy. These are the three major exponents of this category of novel. In this category of the novel, novelists, they largely continue the previous tradition of the Victorian age of novel writing, which is why they are called the traditionalists. But they do give modern touches to the tradition of novel writing of Victorian era. If we study the novels of H.G. Wells, then we feel that H.G. Wells novels can be divided into three broad categories. Number one category can be called fantastic romances. These fantastic romances are those novels by H.G. Wells which are normally based upon science fiction. In other words, they are based upon science fiction stories. And the examples of these novels are Two Men in the Moon, War of the World. Second important category of H.G. Wells novels is the novel of characters and humor. This category of the novel has novels that largely focus upon the characters and the humors of those characters, main character traits of those characters. In this category of the novels, the famous novels are The History of Mr. Polly and Kipps, called discussion novels. as its very name indicates that what type of novels they are. Here, the novelist H.G. Wells talks about the lower classes of the society, lower middle, and the lower classes of the society, and he sympathizes with them because of their problems and because of their issues. And the example of this type of novel is Tono Bungay. The next important traditionalist is Galsworthy. Galsworthy wrote a novel called Fawcett Saga. This is a long novel, very long novel, which is based upon 6 novels, which is why it is called saga. Saga means a long story. This is basically a novel that is based upon 2 characters, Irene and Soames Fawcett. Both are husband and wife, and Irene in this novel represents or symbolizes the concept of beauty, and Soames Fawcett symbolizes the idea of possession. In this novel, Soames Fawcett forcibly extracts his marital rights from his wife, Irene. So this is an important aspect to this novel. Next important aspect or feature of this novel is variety of characters. This novel, as it is very long kind of a novel, so it has variety of human beings. There is not, a handful of characters, few characters in it. It is a very long novel and it has God's plenty in it. It has lots of characters in it. This variety in characterization of this novel clearly reflects an important aspect of the art of characterization of Galsworthy, and that is his in-depth knowledge about human nature. In this novel, Galsworthy shows that he has a deep knowledge about human nature, that he is capable of creating all sorts of human beings in the pages of his novels. Next important aspect of this novel is poetic quality about the depiction of some of the natural scenes. When it comes to the depiction of natural scenes, Galsworthy shows his poetic power. As a poet depicts natural scenes in a brilliant manner, in a beautiful manner, in a poetic manner, in the same way he depicts natural scenes in the world of his novel Fawcett Saga in a beautiful manner, in a detailed manner, in such a manner that it creates a picture before the mental or imaginative eye of the readers. The next important traditionalist is Arnold Bennett. Arnold Bennett produced 2 novels. He is famous for 2 novels. Number 1 is Ricey Man Steps, and number 2 is Old Wives' Tales. Especially his novel Old Wives' Tales is a very interesting kind of a novel in which there are 3-4 sisters whose life is depicted by him in a beautiful manner. How they live in a mansion before their marriage, how they spend their childhood over there, and then they get married to different men and go to the different part of England and settle down in their married life, and then after that they return back to the same home, their native home, and they discuss their old times, talk about their old times that they spend in the mansion. Next important category of the novels produced by the modern times is the New Forces. New Forces actually has 3 novelists. Number 1 is James Joyce, number 2 is E.M. Forster, number 3 is D.H. Lawrence. These are the 3 best known novelists that belong to this category of the novelists. James Joyce is called novelists in the sense that he produced such types of novels in the history of English literature that can only be understood by the novelists only. A common reader, an ordinary reader cannot understand his novels, especially from technical point of view. Another important speciality of his novels is that his novels are technically perfect. He is an expert as far as the knowledge related to the form of novel is concerned. Many of the modern novelists, they learnt a lot from his novels as far as the technique, the overall form of writing a novel is concerned. So this is the first important novel belonging to this category. Second is D.H. Lawrence. D.H. Lawrence is one of the important novelists produced by this age. His best known novels are The Rainbow, Lady Chatterley's Lover, Sons and Lovers. So these are the three best known novels by D.H. Lawrence. Let's discuss the characteristics of his novels. First important aspect to his novel is sexual passion as a theme of his novels. First important aspect of his novels is sexual passion as a theme. D.H. Lawrence is a very different kind of a novelist, and he depicted an altogether different type of theme in the world of novel that had never been attempted by any novelists before him. He depicted sexual passion as the central theme, as the nucleus of his novels. The stories of his novels revolve around this particular theme. In this regard, in some of his novels, he says that I want men and women to be able to think of sex fully, completely, and clearly. So this is his opinion, that why he depicted this sexual passion as the theme of his novel, because he wanted them to think of sex fully, completely, and clearly. Next important comment of D.H. Lawrence in this regard is that I have a greater faith in flesh and blood as being wiser than the intellect. In other words, he believes that blood and flesh and their voice is far wiser than the voice of the intellect. Or in simpler words, he wants to say that when we lead our life, we should listen to the voice of our blood and flesh instead of listening to the voice of intellect. So this is another important comment related to the main theme of his novel, which is sexual passion. Next important aspect to his novel is use of symbolism. D.H. Lawrence uses very complex system of symbols in the world of his novels. He does not make use of a simple symbols. His symbols are highly complex, difficult to understand, and highly personal in nature. For example, one of the most famous symbols used by him in the world of his novel is the symbol of broken arc, which later on develops into a complete arc, and then that complete arc further develops into the rainbow. And this symbol is used by him in the novel The Rainbow. So in this way, he communicates complex modern society, the complex ideas of the modern society through complex symbolism. Next important aspect to his novels is his style. The style of D.H. Lawrence, or the diction or the language of D.H. Lawrence's novels is very different one, very unique one, in the sense that such sort of style, such sort of diction, such sort of language has never been used by any other novelist before him. Why? Because he depicted an altogether different kind of a theme that had never been attempted by any novelist before him. So he had to invent his own language for the depiction of an altogether new type of a theme, which was sexual passion. While talking about this style, this new language, one of the critics says that D.H. Lawrence forcibly extracts meaning out of words, as his father hacked coal out of coal pits. But the effects are very original one. He invented a language in which the niceties and the subtleties of this new theme could be communicated in a successful manner. E.M. Forster is the next important novelist who belongs to this category of the new forces. He wrote different novels, but he is famous for his novel A Passage to India, The Longest Journey, A Room with a View, and Howard's End. In these novels, he depicts different things. He has different aspects about them. For example, one of the most important aspects of these novels is mysticism, element of mysticism. All of his novels, they do have one or the other character representing the mysticism. For example, in the novel Howard's End, there is Ruth Wilcox, there is Margaret Schlegel. Both of them are mystic types of ladies. Then there is Miss Avery. She is also a mystic type of a lady in this novel. And in the novel A Passage to India, there is Mrs. Moore. Mrs. Moore represents the mysticism of the novel. She's a mystic kind of a lady, and she foresees certain things that can't be seen by an ordinary kind of a person. So this is the first important aspect to his novels. Next important aspect to his novels is anti-materialism, anti-class consciousness. E.M. Forster wages a crusade against the materialism of the age, the class consciousness of the age. He, in other words, condemns the materialism of the society and class consciousness of the society that was there in the Victorian culture, in the Victorian society. Next important aspect to the novels of E.M. Forster is to connect. This is the motto of all his novels. D.H. Lawrence does not believe in the divisions in the world. He wants unity in the divisions of the world. Whether this division is there in the individual, in the society, in the community, in a province, in a country, in a continent, or internationally this division exists. He wants the removal of, disappearance of this division. And he wants unity, harmonious balance or unity in all the divisions of the world. He believes that even in an individual, there are two poles. One is that of spirituality and the other is that of physicality. In simple words, on the one hand, there is physical desires. On the other hand, there is spiritual desires. He believes that both these desires should be harmonized. Both these desires should be connected together in a harmonious manner. How? By following both of them in a balanced manner. We should not live our life completely by our physical desires or completely by our spiritual desires. Rather, we should strike a balance between both the desires. And to some extent, we should listen to our spiritual desires. To some extent, we should listen to our physical desires. In this way, we will live a balanced life. And same, the message of to connect or connection is conveyed by E.M. Forster in the novel A Passage to India. He wants friendship between the masters and the slaves, the Britishers and the Indians. So he fails in his attempts, but he is hopeful that this connection, this harmonious friendship between the masters and the slaves, Indians and the Britishers, would not take place now, but it would take place in somewhere in the future. Next important category of the novels produced by the modern times is the psychological novel or the stream of consciousness novel. Stream of consciousness novels has three important novelists. Number one is James Joyce. Number two is Virginia Woolf. Number three is Dorothy Richardson. First of all, we are going to discuss James Joyce. James Joyce is regarded as the best stream of consciousness novelist. He is the best psychological novelist. If we read his novels, then we will feel that his novels are highly complex in nature, highly intricate and difficult in nature. His novel Ulysses is particularly said to be the most difficult form of literature ever to exist in the history of English literature. Some of the critics are of the view that this novel is far more difficult than even T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, the poem The Waste Land. And then he also wrote another novel, The Finnegan Wake. This is another important novel. So all the novels of James Joyce are highly complex in nature because they are based upon stream of consciousness of its characters. Next important novelist is Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf produced quite a few novels, but best known novels of Virginia Woolf are To the Lighthouse, Mrs. Dalloway, The Waves. These are the best known novels by Virginia Woolf. One of the important characteristics of Virginia Woolf's novels is use of stream of consciousness technique. She uses stream of consciousness technique or psychological technique in the depiction of her characterization. Whenever she talks about her characters, she talks about her characters from inside, from the psychological point of view, from the consciousness point of view. She does not talk about the outside of her characters, rather she mainly focuses upon the inside of her characters. Before Virginia Woolf, Stream of Consciousness novel had no plot, but she introduced a kind of a plot, a semblance of a plot, a bit of a plot. So she gave a sort of a unity and connection to haphazard events and incidents of Stream of Consciousness novel. Next important novelist is Dorothy Richardson. Dorothy Richardson wrote The Painted Roofs. In this novel, she focuses upon the psychology of its character, Miriam Henderson. This is the central figure, central character in this novel, and she focuses upon the psychology of this character. What goes through the psychology, the mind, the stream of consciousness of Miriam Henderson during the different stages of her life, she depicts that in this novel. And in this way, lays bare her psychology before the readers. So this is an important aspect to her novels. So this is it for today. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.